Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to read the next chapters of the essays of Michel Montaigne. These ones are not ones I'm particularly interested in, but I'm going to read them through anywhere. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. And we're going to keep going on our trek of reading the complete works of Michel Montaigne. Quintus Marcius, the Roman legate in the war against Perseus, king of Macedonia, to gain time wherein to reinforce his army, set on foot some overtures of accommodation, with which the king, being lulled asleep, concluded a truce for some days, by this means giving his enemy opportunity and leisure to recruit his forces, which was afterwards the occasion of the king's final ruin. Yet the elder senators, mindful of their forefathers' manners, condemned this proceeding as degenerating from their ancient practice, which, they said, was to fight by valor and not by artifice, surprises and night encounters, neither by pretending flight nor unexpected rallies to overcome their enemies, never making war till having first proclaimed it, and very often assigning both the hour and place of battle. Out of this generous principle it was that they delivered up to Pyrrhus, his treacherous physician, and to Etrurians, their disloyal schoolmaster. This was indeed a procedure truly Roman, and nothing allied to the Grecian subtlety, nor to the Punic cunning, where it was reputed a victory of less glory to overcome by force than by fraud. Deceit may serve for a need, but he only confesses himself overcome who knows he is neither subdued by policy or misadventure, but by dint of valor, man to man, in a fair and just war. It very well appears, by the discourse of these good old senators, that this fine sentence was not yet received amongst them. What matters whether by valor or by stratagem we overcome the enemy? There are Chians, says Polybus, abhorred all manner of double dealing in war, not reputing it a victory unless where the courage of the enemy was fairly subdued. Whether you or I shall rule, or what shall happen, let us determine by valor. Cicero. In the kingdom of Ternate, amongst those nations which we so broadly call barbarians, they have a custom never to commence war till it first be proclaimed, adding with an ample declaration of what means they have to do it with what and how many men, what ammunitions, and what both offensive and defensive arms. But also, that being done, if their enemies do not yield and come to an agreement, they conceive it lawful to employ without reproach in their wars any means which they may help them to conquer. The ancient Florentines were so far from seeking to obtain any advantage over their enemies by surprise that they always gave them a month's warning before they drew their army into the field by the continual tolling of a bell they called Martinella, after St. Martin. For what concerns ourselves, who are not so scrupulous in this affair, and who tribute the honor of the war to him who has the profit of it, and who, after Lysander says, where the lion's skin is too short, we must eke out with a bit from that of the fox, the most unusual occasions to surprise are derived from this practice, and we hold that there are no moments wherein a chief ought to be more circumspect and to have his eyes so much at watch as those of parleys and treaties of accommodation. And it is therefore become a general rule amongst the martial men of these later times that a governor of a palace never ought, in a time of siege, to go out to parley. It was for this that in our father's day of Seigneur de Montmode and della Assini defending Mosuin against the Count of Nassau were highly censured. But yet as to this it would be excusable in that governor who, going out, should notwithstanding do it in such a manner that the safety and advantage should be on his side, as Count de Gludio de Rangon did at Reggio. These names are a struggle. If we are to believe Du Bellay of Glush, I don't even know how I'd even begin to pronounce that. Let's see what it says phonetically. No, won't even find it for me. Says it was he himself, when Signor de Escut approached to parley, who stepped so little away from his fort that a disorder happening in the interim of parley, not only Monsieur de la Cote and his party who were advanced with him found themselves by much the weaker, insomuch as Alessandro Trivuccio was there slain, but he himself followed the count, and relying upon his honor to secure himself from the danger of the shot within the walls of the town. As a summary, I imagine what they're saying is someone came out to parley but only took a few steps away and was shot at. They just went back in the building. It was a rather, cumbersome way to do that. Eumenes being shut up in the city of Nora by Antigonus, and by him implored to come out to speak with him, as he sent him word it was fit he should to a greater man than himself, and one who had now an advantage over him, returned this noble answer. Tell him, said he, that I shall never think any man greater than myself, whilst I have my sword in my hand, and would not consent to come out to him, till first, according to his own demand, Antigeus had delivered him his own newborn Polytimenes in hostage. And yet some have done very well in going out in person to parley. On the word of the Assaillant, witness Henry de Vaux, a cavalier of Champagne, who being besieged by the English in the castle of Commercy, and Bartholomew de Bruns, who commanded at the Leaguer. I don't know what that is. Let's see what that is. Ledger, a member of a particular league, especially a sports player. Okay, so commanded at having so sapped the greatest part of the castle without, that nothing remained but setting fire to the props to bury the besieged under the ruins, he requested that said Henry to come out to speak with him for his own good, which he did with 3 more in company, and his ruin being made apparent to him, he conceived himself singularly obliged to his enemy, to whose discretion he and his garrison surrendered themselves, and fire being presently applied to the mine, the props no sooner began to fall, but the castle was immediately blown up from its foundations, not one stone being left upon another. I could, and do with great faculty, reply on the faith of another, but I should very unwillingly do it in such a case, as it should thereby be judged that if it was rather an effect of my despair and want of my courage than voluntarily, and out of the confidence and security in the faith of him who I had to do. Chapter 6. The hour of parley dangerous. I saw, notwithstanding, lately at Musaeddin, a place not far from my house, that those who were driven out thence by our army and others of their party highly complained of treachery, for that during a treaty of accommodation, at the very interim that their deputies were treating, they were surprised and cut to pieces, a thing that, peradventure, in another age, might have had some colour of foul play. But, as I have just said, the practice of arms in these days is quite another thing, and that there is now no confidence in an enemy excusable till the treaty is finally sealed. And even then the conqueror has enough to do to keep his word. So hazardous a thing it is to entrust the observation of the faith a man has engaged to a town that surrenders upon easily and favorably conditions to the license of a victorious army, and to give the soldier free entrance into it in the heat of blood. Lucius Regulus, a Roman praetor, who, having lost his time in attempting to take the city of Phoecia by force, by reason of the singular valor wherewith the inhabitants defended themselves, conditioned at least to receive them as friends to the people of Rome, and to enter the town as into a confederate city, without any manner of hostility, of which he gave them all assurance, but having for the greater pomp brought his whole army with him, it was no more in his power, with all the endeavor he could use, to restrain his people, so that artifice, revenge, trampling underfoot both his authority and all military discipline, he saw a considerable part of the city sacked and ruined before his face. Cleomenes, who wont to say, that which mischief soever a man could do his enemy in time of war was above justice, and nothing accountable to it in the sight of the gods and men. And so, having concluded a truce with those of Argos for 7 days, the 3rd night after he fell upon them, when they were all buried in sleep, and put them to the sword, alleging that there had no knights been mentioned in the truce, but the gods punished this subtle perfidy. I haven't seen that word before. I imagine it means deceit, but let's look it up. Deceitfulness, untrustworthiness. Perfidy. Yep. In a time of parley also, and while the citizens were relying upon the safety warrant, the city of Casalinium was taken by surprise, and that even in the age of the Jewish Justice captains and the most perfect Roman military discipline, for it is not said that it is not lawful for us in time and place to make advantage of our enemies' want of understanding as well as their want of courage. And doubtless war has natural many privileges that appear reasonable even to the prejudice of reason, and therefore here the rule fails. Naimenin, oh, that's Latin. No one should praise upon another's folly. Cicero. But I am astonished at the great liberty allowed by Xenophon in such cases, and that both by precept and by the example of several exploits of his complete emperor, an author of a very great authority, I confess, in those affairs, as being in his own person both a great captain and a philosopher of the first form of Socrates' disciples, and yet I cannot consent to such a measure of license as he dispenses in all things and places. Monsieur Aubigny, besieging Capua, and after having directed a furious battle against it, Signor Fabricio Collina, governor of the town, having formed a bastion, begun to parley, and his soldiers in the meantime being a little more remiss in their guard, our people entered the palace at unawares and put them all to the sword. And of later memory, at Yavoy, Signor Julio Romero, having played the part of a novice to go out and parley with the constable, and his return found his place taken. But that we might not escape scot-free, the Marquis of Persia, having laid siege to Genova, where Duke Ottavano Fregosa commanded under our protection, and the articles betwixt them being so far advanced that it was looked upon as a done thing, and upon the point to be concluded, the Spaniards in the meantime, having slipped in, made use of this treachery as an absolute victory. And since at Ligny in Barrios, where the Count de Berini commanded, the emperor having his own personal beguiled, I want to say, but that's not what that is. Beleaguer causes problems or difficulties. Where the Count de Berini commanded, the emperor having his own personal beleaguered that palace. The Bertheville, said the Count's lieutenant, going out to parley, whilst he was capitulating, the town was taken. Victory is ever worthy of praise, whether obtained by valor or wisdom, as Aristotle. But the philosopher Chrysippus was of another opinion, wherein I also concur. For he was used to say that those who run a race ought to employ all the force they have in what they are about, as to run as fast as they can, but that it is by no means fair in them to lay any hand upon their adversary to stop him, nor to set a leg before him to throw him down. And yet more generous was the answer of that great Alexander to Polyperchon, who was persuading him to take advantage of the night's obscurity to fall upon Darius. By no means, said B. Probably said me. It is not for such a man as I am to steal a victory. I'd rather complain of ill fortune than be ashamed of victory. He deigned not to throw down Ordius as he fled, or with the darted spear to give him wound unseen, but overtaking him, he confronted him face to face and encountered man to man, superior not in stratagem, but in valiant arms. This is kind of interesting. I mean, there's a lot of history here that I don't know, a lot of places I don't know, a lot of examples I haven't heard of. I mean, the principle's pretty much the same in terms of the evolution of warfare, going from some belief in it being almost like a sport of honor to just being total warfare, right? Win by any means, right? But I'm going to stop there, and maybe we'll get to the next stuff later on. Thank you very much for listening. Bye for now.